How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. You can see I have a Walthers Mainline. I've got a GP9 here. This is an Illinois Central Phase 2, road number 8394. I'll talk about that here in a minute. You can see it's in the black Death Star paint scheme that was from the 1990s on. So I'm going to unbox this here while I talk a little bit. What I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to show you, this is a standard DC, and I cannot run standard DC on my layout with how I have things wired. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to install a Loksound 5 decoder as well as a scale sound speaker, and then I'm also going to super detail this kit with the Walthers GP9 detailing kit. All right, so interesting thing about this, and I'll get right to it. I don't think this locomotive ever existed in this current state. With what I know about Illinois Central and how they do their numbering, the original GP9s that they produced were in the 9000 series, and this is an 8000 series locomotive. Walthers has produced some of the orange and white GP9s. They're all in the 9000 series. The 8000 series was predominantly the rebuilds, GP10s. What's even more interesting about this is Intermountain released their GP10 run, I don't know, probably 6-7 years ago, and they produced the GP10 in this Death Star paint scheme with this exact same Roman number. So I'm not 100% sure why Walthers did this, if it was a misprint on the road number, but this road number never existed on a Phase 2 GP9 as delivered. So I'm just going to leave the styrofoam handrail stanchion protectors in there because I'm going to take the shell off here shortly. Just going to give you a real quick run through. Prototypically speaking, there's a lot of accurate features on this. There's a lot of inaccurate features on this. Probably some of the things that are inaccurate are the horn should be offset to the right or the engineer side of the cab. What is correct, there's the 427-inch fan rotors up above. Predominantly most of the louvers look like they're in the correct places. This one is a 2-stack exhaust. I'll show you the front here. You know, if you've had a Mainline or any of the value brand locomotives, you know that they come void of a lot of the separately applied pieces like handrails, the lift rings, MU hoses, cut levers, etc. So we're going to fix that with this locomotive as well. So we're going to go ahead and get the top popped off here, and then we will get the decoder installed, and then we'll get the speaker installed, and we'll do the programming of the decoder. Okay, to pull the shell off, there are 2 screws here holding the plastic cover of the fuel tank and the air compressors on. There is a screw holding each of the couplers. We're going to need to pull those off, and then underneath this cover there are additional screws before we can get the shell. So I'm going to turn the video off, pull these screws off, and then we will get to the next step. Okay, now that I got the plastic cover off the fuel tank and the air compressors, so there's 2 screws. There's actually 4 screws. You can see there's 2 screws. There's 2 on either side that were underneath the fuel tank. So this is right back actually where the air compressor is. There's a screw in front of and behind both sets of trucks. Leave those 2 screws in. Take the 2 out that were by the fuel tank, which I've already done. And then the shell will just slide right off the frame here. If you take the 2 screws that were down by the coupler boxes off, the whole frame comes undone. So this screw holds the front on, this screw holds the back on. So just leave those in. Those 2 screws pop right out, and we are good to go with the shell off, and you can see the exposed locomotive here. Okay, so we're going to focus on getting this DCC sound decoder installed, as well as needing to install the speaker. So again, out of the box from the factory, this is a DC locomotive. There is no speaker to it.
The Walthers Mainline has a 21-pin decoder. So this is the DC jumper. Basically, it's just a jumper to ensure all the electrical connections are connected and allows it to run on DC. In order to make this a DCC sound, we're going to pull this DC jumper box off. We're going to need to install a speaker, and that's going to go right here where this weight is. This is where the speakers go on the Walthers Mainline locomotive, or at least the GP9s. They're all manufactured a little bit differently. The right is the head end of the locomotive. The left is the rear of the locomotive. And that's important to note just from an orientation standpoint as we're getting things set up and ready to go. So other than your soldering equipment, to be able to pull the conversion off to DCC in these locomotives is pretty simple. First, you need a decoder, and I chose the Loksound ESU Loksound 5. This is a blank decoder, so that probably doesn't show real well on the screen. This is just a generic DCC decoder. We're going to program it here after we get it installed, but you can see that that's in the box there. It's a 21 pin. Set that aside for a second. We need a speaker. You can get a bunch of aftermarket speakers for these locomotives. I'm going to go ahead and plug Scale Sound Systems. I've had great luck with them. JT Burke is the gentleman's name who runs this company. These are amazing speakers. I highly recommend them. This isn't a paid promotion. I do purchase all of these direct from him, but the sound on these is amazing. He has these for all different brands, manufacturers, models. So even within the Walthers, there's a bunch of different ones. So this one's designed, this is a universal Walthers Mainline speaker. So we're gonna go ahead and eventually get that weight pulled out, and it's gonna go into just above the rear trucks. And the last thing you're gonna need to do is we have to wire up the speaker. And on the Walthers Mainline, and I'm gonna zoom in here, there are these electrical connection boxes on the motherboard here. And I know it's really, really hard to see, but this one here is the speaker. You might be able to see it. It just says SPK on the board. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to do a lot of these DCC conversions, go ahead. You can get these off Amazon, relatively cheap. These are just 1mm quick plugs, and the ends are already stripped, so I'll be able to solder these on to the speaker, and then I'm just going to be able to quick connect this into this port on the motherboard, and it saves you from having to actually solder on the motherboard. And you can also remove the speaker without having to desolder or anything. So again, these are just 1mm 2-wire plugs. You get them off Amazon or really any electrical supply store. I think I got a 20 pack for maybe $4 or $5. They're pretty cheap, so always good to have those on hand. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder. I'm going to do this off camera. The speaker, you can kind of see it on the left hand side. That connection has the rubs red, so that's positive. The right side here is not marked, so that's the negative connection. So we'll go ahead, I'm going to get that soldered up, and then I'll show there's a couple screws holding this in. We'll get that taken out and get the new speaker and decoder installed. Okay, got the speaker wired up here, so we're just going to set that off to the side. So the next step is we are going to get this taken care of to get the this piece out where the speaker is going to go. So there's just a piece of black electrical tape holding this on, holding some of the wires in place. So I'm just going to gently, carefully pull this off. I'm going to set it off to the side because I will reutilize this here in a few minutes. There's 2 small Phillips head screws holding this piece on, so I'm just going to gently pull these out, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to turn the camera off so I just get a better angle on this. Okay, so here's the piece that came out, and I'm just going to show you this piece because the corresponding piece underneath, see how it's sort of curved. Let me get the camera in focus. I know it's really hard to see. So this top part is curved. This piece right here on the inside of the locomotive is also curved. So what's going to happen is this slick little do job will sit right in place there, and I'm going to secure it with some two-sided tape, and we'll run the wires up to the speaker channel and we're good to go. So I'm going to get my tape. I'll get this in there. One of the things you have to be careful of here is the drive gear, so you just want to make sure all the wires and everything. I'm going to put a little piece of tape over that to just hold all the wires and stuff up to make sure they stay out of the gears. We'll secure all those wires down and we'll be ready to get the decoder installed. Okay, got that installed. See the speakers right there. Got my wires tucked back in. Just use some two-sided tape. Make sure I've got good clearance with drive gear there. So now the next step is to go ahead and we're going to install the DCC decoder. So first we're going to pull this jumper board off. Sometimes these are a little bit tricky, but just be gentle. Don't force anything. Pull straight up and this should pop right off. There we go. So we're going to set this aside in case we ever need to do this. Again, I've got my Loksound 5 decoder open. Again, it's really hard to see on this, but it's a 21 pin. So this top left piece right here is where the blank pin is. If you look at the top of your locomotive, you can see that there's a missing pin. So we're going to line those two pieces up. So this is the top, this is the bottom. Just going to gently, carefully slide this in place, and there we go. So we now have a DCC with a Loksound 5 with sound, with scale sound speakers. So next thing, we need to get the decoder programmed, and I'm going to take this to my test layout and we're going to get her programmed. Okay, to download the sound file you need, you're going to go to the ESU webpage, and you can get there by just typing esu.eu into a search engine or just going www.esu.eu and click return. This web page will likely show up in German to start with. You can click on the language icon up here and you can select, because right now I think it's back in German, so just click on English US or whatever language you want to. So then from there, just click on this Downloads tab, and that'll take you to this page, and we'll click on Sound Files. And we have the Loksound 5 family decoder for this particular locomotive. Certainly select the file that you need. So what we're going to do, here are the factory equipped sounds. So if there's something specific you're looking for that's already a factory equipped, but I'm going to click on this Loksound 5 North American and Australian sound files. And easy thing to do in here is just to type in, we want an EMD 567 as the prime mover for GP9s. So you can scroll through the list here and really, so these are arranged by, so EMD, electromotive division, 16 is the number of cylinders, so a 16 cylinder 567. D3, T is turbo, not what we want for this locomotive. So we're probably going to want, these are definitely 16 cylinders. I think this is the one we want right here. So this is an EMD 16 cylinder. It's a 567 BC. The 2 EXH is exhaust, so there's 2 exhaust stacks on this particular, the phase 2 that I have. NT is non-turbo. So if you want to know more, you can certainly click on this More button, and it'll show you pretty much all of the locomotives that could have this particular version of the prime mover, and the GP9s are included on that, GP10s as well. And the sound version was recorded from a prototype GP7. So this is the one we want. So we're going to scroll down here and it tells you everything you need to know about this particular sound file. We're going to click on download. So this is sound file 0599. We're going to go ahead and click through their prompt to make sure that we're following all of their processes. And this will go ahead and go into our downloads file, and then from there I will show you how to retrieve it from the Lokprogrammer software.
Okay, so I have my Lokprogrammer up and running here. So now we need to select the file that we just downloaded. Make sure you remember where you save it. Sometimes it goes to just your downloads folder. This one I actually moved to my, I have a separate folder file system for all of my sound units. So we're going to click on this open file button and it brings me up into my Lokprogrammer file set. I'm going to double click. This is within my computer, so you don't need to follow along. So here is the file I just downloaded, this S sound file 0599. Double click on it, and it's going to go ahead and pull that particular file set up into the programmer interface here. So this is pretty simple. This is all default, and the first thing we really need to do is to get this sound file and everything onto this locomotive. So what we're going to do is I have my locomotive on my programming track. This is all connected. So I'm going to click on this write sound data, and it's going to go ahead and dump that onto the decoder we just installed. This is a pretty lengthy process. It takes about 15-20 minutes depending on how quickly. Sometimes it has to do a firmware update on the decoder, especially if it's hasn't been updated or if it hasn't been installed. It'll do a quick firmware update on that, and it'll write the sound files. And then once we get done with that, I'll come back, we'll do a quick test run on this, and then I'll show you just a few of the things that I modify for my locomotives.
Okay, so I just got done writing the sound file to the decoder. Before I do any additional programming, I just want to double check and confirm that this, number one, the decoder works, number two, the speaker works with the wiring and the hookup that we did. So I just have this on my test track here. I'm going to do just a real quick test. Track power is on. F0 is the headlight. You can see that light up there. This is all default, so this should be directional. So that's the front end. Here's the tail end. I just put it in reverse. I'm going to go ahead and initiate F8, which is a startup sequence. I'm going to run it forward just a couple clicks here. Run it backwards a couple clicks. All right, fantastic. The decoder works. It installed the sound file properly. That's definitely an EMD 567 prime mover. The speaker works. So now that we were able to get this tested out real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back to the programming track, and I'm just going to show you a few things. At this point, you can run the locomotive. It's still at the default address of 3. I'm going to reprogram this to the locomotive road number. I change CV3, CV4, which is basically momentum, delayed start, acceleration, and momentum override to give the simulation of an actual locomotive. And then I also change the brakes a little bit. I do some different decoder functions to optimize for my proto throttle. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of what I do. It's not necessary for you to do that unless you want to.
Okay, so we're back in Lokprogrammer, and this is pretty simple to do some of the changes within Lokprogrammer. So if you see on the left side of your screen here, there's several tabs. I'm in the decoder tab right now, and then the box highlighted is the address. Here's the address of our locomotive. We're going to go ahead and click the long address of this particular locomotive, and we're going to make it the road number of the locomotive. You can certainly do whatever address in there you want to. You just want to make sure it's unique for the locomotives you have. The road number for this locomotive is 8394. So we're just going to go ahead and type that in there. And then I'm going to come up here and click on this
write decoder data, which is the white box with the red arrow to the right. And we're going to click next. And it'll take it 10-15 seconds here to write that data. There we go. And then next thing we're going to do are the brake settings. The Loksound 5 decoders have multiple brake options. I tend to keep it pretty simple. So what I end up doing is I have these functions right here are enabled. And on this particular one, I'm not even going to make any changes. Brake function 1 reduces brake time, set at a value of 128. The maximum speed when the brake function is active is 126. Similar for brake function 2, and then you can see brake function 3 has a little bit shorter amount of time that the locomotive will be moving. So we're going to leave all of that as it currently is. And then I'm going to click on the driving characteristics. This is where you can change either your acceleration, which is CV value of 3. Let me rephrase that. It is CV3. Currently the value is at 20. And then deceleration is CV4. Currently that value is 20. So basically, the higher this number for acceleration is when you apply throttle to the locomotive, there's going to be a delay from the time you apply the throttle until you actually see it moving. Prototypically, when the engineer goes to apply power to the locomotive, there is a delay. It's not instantaneous feedback like when you push the accelerator on your car. There is a little bit of a delay. So I usually set this to a value of about 190, so you can hear the prime mover sort of throttle up before you see the locomotive actually changing. And then similarly, deceleration, trains are big, heavy moving objects. They don't just stop on a dime. So the higher this value, which is CV4, means when you take the throttle off, the locomotive is going to coast for a significant period of time. So I'm actually going to put a maximum value of 255 in this particular CV. And again, I'm going to go ahead and write the changes to the decoder. And finally, once this is done writing here, I'll show you a couple other things that I change, mostly just for my proto throttle. So let's come down here to the function settings. Function outputs is what I want. So there are a few things here. So right now, the front headlight is programmed to function 0, and right now this is currently set as directional, so meaning when the locomotive's in forward, the front light will illuminate. When the locomotive is switched or you change the direction on your throttle, the rear light will switch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this off camera, and certainly if you want to know how to do this, you can reach out to me, but basically I'm going to disable the directionality of this. So I'm going to assign the front headlight to a CV that's not directional and similar to the rear headlight. This one doesn't have ditch lights or anything like that we need to worry about. And then really all of the other functions you can change however you want to. So in a nutshell, those are just some of the changes that I make to the locomotive. I'm not going to test it out right now. I'm going to wait until I get the shell detailed out, get that reinstalled, and then when we're all done with the super detailing, we'll take this thing for a test run.
Okay, so I apologize. I know my little work board here is pretty messy, but this is where I do all my painting and gluing and things, so it's kind of beat up. What you see here, and I know it's probably hard to see, these are all the parts and pieces I'm going to use to super detail my GP9. And when I get done explaining what I've got going on here, I'll actually show you the packaging of what I'm using. So in order to do this, I'm just going to warn you, super detailing locomotives, or freight cars for that matter, any kind of rolling stock, it's a time-consuming, tedious process. Do not get frustrated. Do not try to rush through this. And and you'll have good results. So I'm going to zoom in here just a little tiny bit. So I have a collection here of all sorts of different things. Let me grab my pointer stick here. So have some coupler cut levers up here. I've got MU receptacles here. I've got air hoses, or well, these are MU hoses. I have the platform walkway, the drop walkways, air hoses up here. I've got grab irons. Here's a can antenna. Here's the valve. So all of these parts and pieces I've got prepped, pre-painted, and ready to go. And we'll get to the installation here in a few minutes. I just wanted to show you again, there's a lot of parts and pieces. I think there's roughly over 30 pieces I'm going to apply to this locomotive, and you know, hopefully everything turns out the way I want it to. So as I mentioned, I was going to show you the parts and pieces in the original packaging. I think pretty much all of these items I got through eBay, so you can just go to eBay and search some of these. You'll probably get the best deal. This is a Walthers Mainline, so this is made by the manufacturer. This is a diesel detailing kit, and you can see on the packaging here, this is for the EMD GP9 locomotives. I know it's really hard to see through the plastic, but all the grab irons are in here, the lift rings and so forth. And that's a start. I'm going to use these can style radio antennas. Certainly if your prototype has a Sinclair antenna or a different type of antenna, you can get those. Here are the air hoses I'm going to use on the front and rear of the locomotive. Here are the MU receptacles, and this is for an early GP locomotive. You can see they're in there. These are of course all unpainted. Here are the Cutler cup levers that I'm going to use. These are a little bit more complex. There are some earlier versions that are out there, but this is from what I could tell from the prototypes of the GP9s that a lot of them had this style of cut lever. Here are the drop down steps, and again you can see on the packaging here, these are for EMD locomotive. I don't have a good picture, well let me rephrase that. I have a couple different types of GP9s that I've super detailed. High hood where the bell is mounted on the nose, so this is an Ather nose mount bell. The chop noses, they are actually located on the brakeman side of the locomotive, on the long hood, you know, really kind of by where the blower is located, and I'll show you when I get to it. So I'm out of the packaging for the side mounts. I used my last one that I painted up here. A couple other things that I'm going to use. Again, I got these off eBay, and I've got these pre-painted and ready to go. So I have, these are from KV Models. These are Illinois Central wind deflectors. It's got them painted flat black. Here, again, this is another KV model. These are sunshades, GP9s, or well, early GP unit sunshades. Here are early SD and GP windshield washers, or windshield wipers I should say, and we'll apply those to the model as well. So again, a lot of parts and pieces to this. You can get most of this stuff off of eBay. You just have to do your research and know what you're looking for. The most tedious part of the whole process, I have a pin vise and some drill bits. The index on this, they're number 61 to 80. The larger the number corresponds to a smaller bit. The Walthers instruction manual calls for number 80 bit, which in this case is the smallest bit in here. And I'm going to zoom in here. So what you have to do on these locomotives, and you can, whoop, too far. So you can see that they already have the points marked for drilling, and basically you just put your pin vise in. I use just a little pin to actually score where I want to get the drill bit started, and then you go through and you drill out all of these holes. The instructions show every location on the GP9 of where the marks are for drilling.
You can see that has both the chop nose version and the high hood version, so it shows where all the grabs go, the long grabs, the lift rings and such. So this process usually takes a couple hours, so I'm going to go ahead and get these drilled out, and then we'll come back and start applying the grab irons. Okay, so I was able to get all the parts and pieces added to this locomotive. I would estimate it probably took between 5 to 6 hours to get everything done. So I'm just going to go through and give you some highlights. As I mentioned before, the road number on this is indicative of a rebuilt GP10. All of the GP9s for the Illinois Central were originally in the 9000 series, so this is, I'm going to call this a GP9.5. It's not quite a GP9, it's not quite a GP10. I did add the HORST air filter, you can see that there, so it'll give it a GP10 appearance, but some of the other spotting features are not present. I apologize, I know it's kind of hard to see. Here's just a few of the things I added. So all of the hand grab irons are up there, MU receptacle, drop step, cutler cup lever, all of the MU hoses. There's an air hose, there's a grab iron that runs across the front. Also, can tell, added a can antenna, moved the horn over to the prototypical location, added sunshades, added wind deflectors, added prototypical location of the bell. This originally did not come with the bell. You can kind of barely see it on the top of the HORST filter. There's some lift rings, and all across the long hood there's lift rings. There's a grab iron on top as a lift ring, similar to the back. All of the grab irons, cup lever, MU receptacles, air hose, drop step, chain across the back there. On the engineer side, grab iron on the side here. Again, the sunshades, the HORST air filter. So I think it turned out real nice. It definitely is much improved over the original Walthers Mainline that doesn't have hardly any add-on features. So now we're ready to go ahead and get this assembled back onto the chassis here that we deassembled a little bit ago, and we'll get it hooked up and take her for a test run.